All right, good morning, everybody. Welcome back, second semester. This first unit that we do for second semester is on World War One. Okay, so second semester starts with World War One, and then we go to the Roaring Twenties, and then the Great Depression, and then World War Two, then the Civil Rights Movement, in the 1960s, then the Civil War, the Vietnam War, and then we'll close out the year with the remaining decades, right? So, but first and foremost, okay, is World War One. So before the war happens, right? There's a whole got to be a setup, right? This doesn't just happen overnight. And there's an acronym for you to remember what led to this, and it's called MANIA. Okay, so this acronym will help you as we go throughout this. Okay, so something has to make this bomb explode. So this is not a real bomb. Okay, but back in the day, I used to have a project where I would have kids make bombs and bring them to school. Unfortunately, we can't do that anymore. Okay, that would not be a really good idea. So these are just some of the best ones that I saved from over the years. You can see that it's got the dynamite, right? And so it's got the little wick. It's not real dynamite because it's like a soda bottle or something. Okay, so but something had to light this on fire to make this whole thing explode. Okay, so we got to figure out what that was. The mania is kind of the bomb, right? And then something has to make that bomb explode. Okay, all right, so we'll start with this. Okay, the M of mania is militarism, right? There's a buildup of weapons. Okay, and it's kind of like Christmas, right? We just got off of Christmas, as weird as it was, and you had gifts that you got, and maybe this wasn't the case now, but certainly this was the case when you were a little kid. Like you get a new toy, right, and you just can't wait to use that new toy, right? Like in the Christmas Story, when he gets the little Red Ryder BB gun, like he can't wait to go outside with the BB gun to use the BB gun. Kind of the same way, right? These countries, they got all these new weapons, like a machine gun and a tank, and then even more that are going to come as the war develops, right? All of the people are doing this to keep up with Germany, right? The Germans had this stuff, and so since the Germans had it and the French were so close, the French got it, right? And so since the Germans and the French had it, the Russians thought we better get it. And since those countries had it, then England said we better get it. Austria-Hungary said we better get it, right? They all knew all this stuff was building up, and so they had these weapons and they wanted to use them. They were like, I want to use them. Okay, so this militarism idea definitely came through for Germany because it was called the von Schlieffen plan, that the Germans would attack France before Russia. They developed this in like 1894. World War One is going to start in 1914. Okay, so this von Schlieffen plan was in place for 20 years. Like they were all prepared just in case a war happens, and this is what we do. Okay, all nations were mobilized for war. They were ready to go, okay, if they needed to, because they were afraid of their neighbor. And a lot of them were afraid of Germany. So they were keeping up, okay, with Germans, right? People definitely, Germany was the leader. So people definitely hated on them for being the leader, right? So they built up their militaries and they were ready to use them. So militarism is one. There's the von Schlieffen plan. You can see they're going to attack. They're not going to attack through those French fortress towns. When we get to the battles later on, you'll see one of them, Verdun, it's crazy how fortified it is. So the Germans know that it's there. They can see it, right? They can see it across the border. Okay, so they're not going to attack that way. The von Schlieffen plan was ignore Russia on the other side, attack through neutral Belgium, okay, and Holland, and then get into Paris. That was their plan. Okay, the French kind of knew that was going to happen, but they didn't really have a plan to stop it. Okay, all right, so militarism still. Here's the next one, and that's alliances, right? This visual does a better job. Okay, the triple entente is France, England, and Russia. Okay, and then the triple alliance is Germany, Austria-Hungary, and Italy. So it gets confusing because it's triple, right? It's get more confusing because Italy is going to change sides later on, and you're going to add the Turkish Empire to the yellow on there once the war starts. But easy way to remember this: entente is a French word, right? It sounds like a croissant, right? So entente is a French word. So you got England, France, and Russia. Those three are together: Germany, Austria-Hungary, Italy. This goes back to that militarism and the von Schlieffen plan, because the Germans know this. Like these are supposed to be secret alliances, but everybody knows, right? So that's why Germany has this plan to not attack Russia. They're going to attack France first. Okay, so they know this going in. And by the way, look how big Austria-Hungary is. It's a big, big place. So here it is written out for you. Triple Entente is Russia, England, and France. The Triple Alliance is Germany, Austria-Hungary, and Italy. Okay, so what I liken this to is like when I was in my fraternity house in college. There were 100 guys that lived in the same house. So if you were a random guy, right, you weren't going to go start a fight with me because I was in a fraternity, right? So you knew that if you jumped me and beat me up, which nobody would ever do that because I'm the world's nicest guy, uh, they they knew that there would be repercussions, that somebody from my fraternity house would go after them, right? Now, so we didn't have any fights, right? Me and my friends, we never did any of that. I always thought that was stupid. So we never were involved in that. There were people that were, and so like one person from a different fraternity would fight somebody else from a different fraternity, and then those two fraternities would be fighting with each other, which is totally stupid, right? But the idea behind the alliances was to protect themselves. So France, if they were by themselves, if Germany attacked them, well, Germany knew that England was on their side. Okay, so they knew that there'd be a war if they attacked another country because that other country had fraternity brothers to help protect them. Okay, so the idea was you get these friends, and then these friends are going to help you from the big bad bully, which mainly was Germany. So then you could be protected in case they did. And the idea would be to prevent this from ever happening. Of course, if somebody does attack and something happens, ooh, now we got a problem, right? Because if Germany's mad at Russia for some reason and they attack Russia, well, then France has to attack Germany because they're on the same side. So now you got this big problem, right? So the alliances were designed to prevent war, but really what ended up happening was it caused the war. Okay, so that's the A in mania. All right, the next one is nationalism, and that's pride in one's nation. People thought their country was the best. The Germans, right, were mainly all Germans. It wasn't like all the immigrants that are around today, where you have Germans that really are from Poland, or you have Germans that are from Syria, okay, or Germans that are, it's like America, right? We have immigrants from all over the place. But man, when in those days, 100 years ago, when it came time to go to war, France was the best, Germany was the best, Italy was the best. Like they all thought they were the best, so they were all willing to fight for their own nation. Okay, so nationalism was definitely a part of this. So it's patriotism, right? It's being a patriot and being willing to fight for your country. All right, the I is imperialism. You remember that from last semester? Okay, European nations were racing to claim lands all over the place. Okay, mainly in Africa and also in China, but really in Africa. So in 1884, so this is 1914 when this starts, but in 1884, there was a meeting called the Berlin Conference where literally the European nations broke apart Africa and divided it up and said, okay, Belgium, you take this part, France, you get this part, right? With zero input from the African nations, right? That still causes problems today, okay, in those African nations, right? Because there's ethnic groups that live together that hate each other because the Europeans created the boundary for them to live in. It's totally stupid, right? Well, that imperialism, right, those places wanting more territory helped lead to the start of this war. The countries were competing against each other, and so they were enemies. So if you could defeat your enemy, then you would get not only their territory in Europe, but you'd also get their territory in Africa. Okay, so this was also something that played a part. Maybe not as big a part as the other ones, but definitely played a part. All right, this is a big one. Okay, awful governments. They were looking for reasons for war. Okay, they wanted more territory, like I mentioned just a minute ago. And then Franz Ferdinand, right? Franz Ferdinand's going to be the spark that lights this thing on fire. Okay, he gets assassinated. I'll get to the story in a minute. And he was the heir to the throne, which meant he was going to be the next king of Austria-Hungary. Okay, he wasn't the king. He was the heir to the throne. He was going to be the king. But his great uncle, a guy named Franz Joseph, who hated him, didn't like him at all, he didn't even attend his funeral. Okay, when he did die. So to use that as an excuse is a pretty good example of an awful government. Like, what are you doing? Like, you're going to go to war for a guy that you didn't even like? Like, that seems not to make any sense, right? But really what they wanted was more territory. They were greedy. They were kind of lazy. All the governments, not just Austria-Hungary, but Russia, but Germany, okay, they were all the same in the sense that they kind of weren't very good and wanted to go to war anyway, right? Okay, so that's your mania, right? Militarism, alliances, nationalism, imperialism, and awful governments, right? Okay, now, the sides, once the war starts, okay, the central powers are Germany, Austria-Hungary, and Ottoman Empire. That used to be the Triple Alliance, okay? But you'll notice Italy was in the Triple Alliance, and now they gone, okay? So they're out. and now Turkey, right? The Ottoman Empire is really what they were called. If you ever heard Istanbul and Constantinople, that's the Ottoman Empire. And that's like what is today Iraq, what is today Iran, right? It was a huge, massive empire for like 400 or 500 years. This was the end of it. And they were awful. They were done, right? They've been around for so long. They really weren't very much of a power, but they joined the Central Powers. Okay, so then you get the Allied powers, which is Russia, France, and Great Britain. Notice who is not in this. This is American history, and this has nothing to do with America, right? America says, we're all the way overseas. We don't want anything to do with this. Okay, most Americans said, we do not want to be a part of this war. So it starts in 1914. America doesn't get in for 3 years. We'll get into that later, but it takes 3 years before America gets involved. Okay, all right. So what's the spark, right? I've been talking about this thing, right? Europe was like a bomb ready to explode. You had the mania all here, right? In fact, look, Triple Alliance, okay, is on there. It's probably backwards. There's the von Schlieffen plan, right? What else we got? We got the other Triple Alliance, right? Triple Entente, right? All of those things are on there. Okay, so this thing's like a bomb, right? They got the militarism that's in here. They're all eager to use their own weapons. Okay, now, what makes this thing light? Okay, it's this guy, right? And it's not because he has a terrible mustache, although that's pretty impressive. Okay, this guy's a guy named Franz Ferdinand, who, if Franz Ferdinand wouldn't have got assassinated and he'd have lived his life out, you would have no idea who he was. You'd have never heard of him. Okay, but Franz Ferdinand was from Austria-Hungary, okay, and the southern part of Austria-Hungary, so places today like Bosnia, Serbia, okay, they wanted to be independent. They did not want to be a part of the Austro-Hungarian Empire anymore. Okay, and Franz Ferdinand wasn't in charge, but Franz Ferdinand was okay with that, right? Like he was willing to at least discuss it. Where Franz Joseph, who was the king of Prussia, he didn't want anything to do with that. Okay, he wouldn't even discuss it. Franz Ferdinand was kind of on their side, so he goes to Sarajevo, okay, which is a city in the Austro-Hungarian Empire. It's in, I always get this confused, but it's in Bosnia, right? So he goes to Sarajevo to give a speech at like a luncheon, right, with all these dignitaries. And there's a group of people that knows he's coming, kind of like the assassination of Abraham Lincoln. It was in the newspaper, right? So there was a terrorist group, and they were called the Black Hand. Okay, the Black Hand was a group of nationals. They wanted Serbia and Bosnia to be independent. Okay, they wanted them to have more independence and be away from Austria-Hungary. The Black Hand really was a group of like 10 people, and they were cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs, but they wanted this to happen. So what they did is they mapped out this plan that when Franz Ferdinand came to town, they were going to assassinate him. Okay, so he comes to Bosnia, he comes to Sarajevo. When he comes to Sarajevo, there's a member of the Black Hand who's outside like a parade route, right? So Franz Ferdinand is coming down the street like he'd be going down Main Street in Belleville, right? And he's got a car, looks like this. Okay, notice it doesn't have a top, it's convertible. He knows people are angry with him. I don't think he really thinks anybody's going to try to kill him, right? Okay, so as he's proceeding towards this luncheon, somebody comes up to this car, takes a grenade, throws it in the car. It's in the car, and Franz Ferdinand is in there with his wife. Okay, her name is Sophia, and they're in there. Okay, so what do? He reaches down, picks up the grenade, throws it out of the car. The grenade explodes behind the car. Nothing doing, right? But everybody knows that somebody tried to kill him, right? They saw it. It's kind of like a parade, like I said. He goes to the luncheon. He keeps going, okay? When he gets to the luncheon, he gets up to give a speech, but as he's giving the speech, the word comes out, right? It starts to be a rumor where people are like, oh, and they're talking to each other, and the crowd gets to be a little unruly while he's talking. And he's talking about how he's willing to give them this, independence. Well, and remember, somebody just tried to kill him. And so he leaves there. There's kind of a ruckus, right? He gives a speech. He leaves there, right? Now, he's smart enough to say, maybe we shouldn't go back down the same path, right? Because somebody tried to kill me before we got there. He's not smart enough to put the top up on the convertible. But he does go a different route. And as he's going a different route away from the luncheon, there's a guy sitting at a cafe. So if you're on the main street, right, in Belleville, like Tavern on Main, and right now we got all this outdoor dining, it would be like somebody would be sitting outside at a table. Okay, so this guy who is a teenager, okay, his name is Gavrilo Princip. Okay, he's a member of that Black Hand, and he's bummed out. Okay, he's bummed out because it didn't work. Okay, the assassination attempt, he knew it was a big moment and it didn't work. And so now they don't have any idea where Franz Ferdinand is going to go. And Gavrilo Princip is sitting outside at this cafe and he's distraught. He's upset because things didn't go his way that day. Well, as he's sitting there, he hears this commotion coming down the street. And as he hears the commotion coming down the street, he realizes that that commotion is Franz Ferdinand. And they took a different route. He happened to be on that route. And as he's on that route, well, here comes Franz Ferdinand. Gavrilo Princip jumps over the little railing between the cafe and the road, runs up to the car, boom, shoots Franz Ferdinand in the head, tries to shoot his wife, okay, and then it's chaos, right? He succeeds. He smokes Franz Ferdinand. It's not good. Okay, so they take off. The car takes off to get Franz Ferdinand to the hospital. Gavrilo Princip runs. They catch him. Okay, Franz Ferdinand dies on June the 28th. This is real important. He dies on June the 28th. That's when the assassination is. Okay, World War I doesn't start until July 28th. It takes a month. Okay, when Pearl Harbor got attacked on December 7th, 1941, and the United States went to war, we went to war the next day because we were so upset. This takes a month. Okay, the reason it took a month is because of the second A in there. Okay, in Mania, because of the awful governments, they were looking for a reason, so they worked all these different back channels to go to war. Okay, this guy that you're looking at, not me, him, Gavrilo Princip, he killed Franz Ferdinand, and that's often gets the blame for the start of the war. Okay, but man, it was all those other things, and those governments made this choice. They easily could have avoided going to war. Okay, but they chose to go to war instead. Okay, now they didn't have any clue what the death toll was going to be, but man, with these new weapons, with all these countries so close together, this was a major catastrophe and a terrible thing that happened. Right? Okay, so that's World War I. That's how it started. Okay, because by the way, those alliances, once Austria-Hungary, okay, they declare war on Serbia, which is where he's from, Gavrilo Princip. They declare war on Serbia. Serbia had an alliance themselves with Russia. Okay, so then Russia has to defend Serbia. And when Russia defends Serbia, now Germany is at war with Russia. So now that Germany's at war with Russia, Russia's allied with France. So France has to go to war with Germany. When they do that, they're also going to war with Austria-Hungary. I said Germany, I'm sorry. Okay, Franz Ferdinand is from Austria-Hungary. So Austria-Hungary had to declare war on Russia. Russia, okay, was friends with Germany. Russia was friends with France in the alliance. I'm sorry, was in the alliance. So now France has to declare war on Austria-Hungary. Austria-Hungary is allied with Germany. So it triggers this thing. It's a chain reaction. Boom, 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 boom. We have massive war on our hands. But remember, where's the United States in this war? They're not in it. We're across the Atlantic Ocean, and we're doing our best to stay out of it. All right.